We got kickoff times for Iowa football. Half of the schedule now has been announced of when the games will be played throughout the course of the 2024 season. A schedule that sets up well for the Hawkeyes. How about the kick times? We'll talk about that. Plus, David Eickholt from HawkeyeInsider.com joins us all today. Locked on Hawkeyes.
You are Locked on Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, welcome in. I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We're available wherever you find podcasts, and you can also watch us on YouTube. While you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Well, it was a big day earlier in the week as we found out the kickoff times for a number of the Iowa football games coming up this season. This is kind of right of the springtime, right as we get prepared for the season. We normally find out those kickoff times for the first 3 games of the year. Included in that each and every season is the matchup against Iowa State, knowing that game's going to be played, what it's going to be. Are there going to be any night games? And night games, most importantly, for us fans inside of Kinnick Stadium. And that's always a huge component. And though we did not get any of those night kickoff times, we'll speculate a little bit about what the rest of the schedule is going to look like. We got David Eickholt stopping by, and potentially who is going to be that next color commentator on the Hawkeye Radio Network. A busy one here to get you in through the weekend. Maybe you're doing a little yard work out and about throughout the weekend. Hope you have it a great one here as we finish up May and flip the calendar into June. Well, let's start at the top, and it was the release of the football kickoff times and the home opener against Illinois State. Remember about a decade back, Iowa took on Illinois State. They were a preseason number 1 team by many publications at the FCS level, and Iowa just ran them absolutely off the field. Now, this Redbird team is not anticipated to even be close to that one. They're okay. They're an okay Missouri Valley Conference team, but this should be a game that Iowa dominates. And this should be a game where we don't have those hairy moments, if you will, where you're left wondering, oh man, how is this going to go? What's this going to look like? It does not anticipate that this is going to be one of those FCS foes like a North Dakota State, like a South Dakota State, even a UNI that you have to be concerned about. That will be an 11 a.m. kickoff time. I know for a lot of people, being Labor Day weekend, this is one that they really enjoy, getting that early kickoff time. You get to Iowa City in the morning, get the game, and then you got the whole rest of Saturday to do what you like. Sunday, Monday with the Labor Day weekend. A lot of people enjoy that. There's other people with other parts of this one, but the home opener, always special. And I'll tell you, been going to games now since 1988, I believe was my first game as an 8-year-old, walking into Kinnick Stadium. And here I am today, being in the stands hundreds of times now for games. And that first time, each and every season, I walk into Kinnick Stadium, I still get the chills. A lot of times that first game of the year, that's when I bring my children along. That's the one game a year, if we do a game, that they make their way to. Sometimes it's really hot, as it was last year for the home opener, but I still have those moments. And I'm sure I'm not alone. Maybe I'm a little weird. Well, I think we all know I'm a little weird at minimum, but still get those chills. Walking up the tunnel every single time. It's usually packed getting up the tunnel to get to our seats, but I love that moment and love that still, even as a guy that's in his mid-40s, could still have that feeling walking in and watching some college kids play some football. Looking forward to that 11 a.m. kickoff for game number 1. We speculated about this in the past, and it felt like there were 2 realistic windows for the Iowa State matchup this year in Iowa City, either 2:30 on CBS or a night game on NBC. And then a couple of weeks ago, we found out that the Colorado-Nebraska game was going to be the NBC game. That made it very simple, right? And here we are. So it is the 2:30 kickoff on CBS, the first time since the 1970s that CBS will broadcast an Iowa State game. That is very cool for the state. People that are going to be maybe haven't seen the Cy-Hawk game and what it is, maybe get some new viewers into it. We know in the state what it means and how important it is, and certainly where I am in central Iowa, that Iowa State team returns a ton from last year when they surprised a lot of people coming off a disappointing 2022. They bounced back, and though Iowa got them a year ago, you know it's going to be down to the wire. And unfortunately, the place that Matt Campbell's been able to win has been in Kinnick Stadium. And that's where this game will reside. And then they finish up the non-conference portion of the season against Troy. You're saying, Troy? Oh, come on. This is a good Sun Belt program. It's a program that won double-digit games a year ago. 3 o'clock kickoff for that one. That's a nice one. Middle of September, should be still great weather at that time. Get a long day of tailgating in front of you. 3 o'clock kickoff, and then potentially be able to get back home and see some of the night games after that. Really like that one at the end of the opening portion of the schedule in the non-conference. The next 2 games are road trips. Big Ten game number 1, it's a road trip to Minnesota. That is to be determined. No announcement on the start time for that one on September 21st. And then after a bye week, Iowa comes back with another road trip, and this time it is going to Ohio State. One quick note of that, I just want to take a peek because I hadn't looked real closely at kind of some of the opposing schedules. That's something to pick in the mind. And we'll do this more throughout the course of the summer as we kind of dig deeper and deeper into the prospects and the schedule and what it's going to look like and what other teams' schedules look like, not just Iowa's. Week before Iowa goes to Columbus, though, Ohio State has a road trip. It's to Michigan State. I don't think Sparty's going to be very good at 48 guys in the portal themselves. So it's definitely a rebuild for Jonathan Smith and company up in East Lansing. However, a road trip, they come back home. But maybe that look ahead, because the following week, a potential, maybe even number 1 versus number 2, Ohio State goes to Oregon the final week. Oregon preseason, some polls have them as high as number 3. Many people have Ohio State number 1. I mean, that could be an absolutely epic matchup. Look ahead for the Buckeyes. Maybe I'm just trying to talk myself into things in that one. That one also TBD. The same for the following week as Iowa takes on Washington at home. There is the potential, maybe a night game for that one. If you're looking for a night one, October 12th, still potential really good weather. Now, it's Iowa. We know it could also be really bad, as we've seen in the past, but I'll put that one maybe in the back of your mind if you're looking for the potential of a game that's played at night at Kinnick Stadium. That could be one. Then at Michigan State, that is the final of the TBD there, and that 4 straight games. The Northwestern game will be a 2:30 kickoff. Where it'll be played, what television network, that is still to be announced. Home for Northwestern after playing them in Wrigley a year ago. Then it's the home matchup against Wisconsin. That one is also a to be determined on that front in terms of kickoff time. As we found out beforehand, the Friday night matchup against UCLA on that quick turnaround, that will be an 8 o'clock Central kickoff, 6 o'clock Pacific time on Big Fox for that. TBD for the Maryland game, and then wrap up. And how about this? Black Friday, Nebraska. We know we get the game each and every year. It is becoming more and more of a tradition for us Hawkeye fans. Of course, Nebraska's had it for a long time. It was Colorado back when they were in the Big 12, Oklahoma for years, also going back in the day, those Black Friday games. Nebraska's used to it. We're getting used to it. But a night kickoff there, that's going to be different. That's going to be absolutely wild. Black Friday, national TV with NBC. So potentially 2 night kickoffs. I mentioned the Washington game. I think that one has a chance. But of course, the Nebraska game has been scheduled 6:30 for that. David Eickholt covers the Hawkeyes for 24/7 Sports. We will talk a little bit with David about everything going on in the world of Hawkeyes. We got a lot of basketball to talk about. Payton Sandfort's decision to come back, what that means in his mind for Iowa basketball. Little WNBA, Kate Martin and Caitlin Clark as they make their first go around in the WNBA, and a little bit more taking a look at some football recruiting prospects that Iowa's going to be after. David Eickholt joins us as we continue on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Gametime takes getting NBA Finals tickets even faster and easier. The prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer you get to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. Well, we are to the finals, but it's not just the NBA. Take a look around Major League Baseball. You're making a summer trip wherever it is. You're here in the Midwest. You can get to Kansas City, Minneapolis, Chicago, Milwaukee, wherever it is. Maybe you're taking a longer trip. You can find great deals on MLB tickets with the Gametime app. They have killer last-minute deals, up to 60% savings on buying those last-minute tickets for concerts, sports, comedy, theater, and a whole lot more. And my favorite price, the all-in pricing. Finding out exactly what your total is going to be up front. Don't have to worry about those surprising big fees that you see a lot of the other places out there when you get to checkout. Download the Gametime app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That'll get you $20 off your first purchase. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
David Eickholt, HawkeyeInsider.com. A lot of ground to cover with David Eickholt, and he joins us. Hello, David Eickholt. How are you?
Doing well, guys. How are you doing?
One of the more heartwarming's the right word to put it. One of the better stories that's happened recently is Kate Martin. Quite frankly, being drafted, beating the odds of a second round pick, even making a roster, and not only making a roster, but getting playing time, and when she does, being an active player on making shots, and her teammates seemingly love her. What a great story Kate Martin is. She was great in Iowa, don't get me wrong, but this is another level because nobody saw this part of Kate Martin's story coming, or at least very few.
Yeah, see, I'd love to sit here and take a victory lap about how I called it, but no, I can't do that. I mean, I wasn't sure if she was going to get drafted. I thought she'd go maybe in the third round. But, right when she got to the Aces, it really was a perfect fit. I know they're the back-to-back defending champions, but it's such a perfect culture fit. And from this standpoint as well, Kate Martin is so comfortably and authentically her on and off the basketball court. And you look at the Aces, they're riddled with talent. Jackie Young, Asia Wilson, by the way, if you haven't watched her play, that woman is an absolute superstar, incredible player. Kelsey Plum, they have 3 players average 20 or more points. They don't need another star. Kate Martin knows how to support superstars. She did that with Caitlin Clark at Iowa, and Kate Martin doesn't have any weak points in her game, and I think that's why it's such a perfect fit. She doesn't try to take over, do anything crazy. She plays a role, and she's got an incredibly high floor. She's a solid defender. I think she's a better rebounder for her size than she gets credit for, especially on the offensive glass. She can hit the three-point shot. She can pass the ball effectively. And, she's also a leader despite being a rookie. She just knows how to operate in a professional capacity. So I don't know if she would have made every roster in the WNBA, but the one that she's on and for what they needed, it was an absolute perfect fit. So hats off to Kate Martin. And if she keeps playing like this, she might be on a short list for 6th Woman of the Year in the WNBA. Just an incredible story so far.
It really is. You mentioned Kelsey Plum. Do either of you guys know, is that video of her throwing a T-shirt into the crowd, is that real? Have you seen the arm on Kelsey Plum? At some, I don't know, she's at some event, and it's a T-shirt toss. It's all over Twitter. Have you seen that, David Eickholt?
I believe that's real because I remember seeing it before AI became prominent.
Right.
So I don't know. But I've never been told it's fake, and it's circulated enough, and it's been on enough networks and such where I am inclined to believe it is real.
It's unbelievable. What strength in that left arm of hers. Have you seen it, Trent?
I haven't, no.
Oh, my gosh.
Gonna have to go look that one up. Well, we saw maybe the best game of the career in the WNBA of Caitlin Clark earlier this week. She'll be back on the hardwood again coming up on Thursday evening. With that, David, you just look at her. There's been growing pains. I don't think there's a surprise. Maybe the growing pains have been, or the up and down nature has been a little more uneven than I anticipated. But what you see, and I know you are not alone. You and I agree on this one. Looks like maybe they need some work at that head coaching position with the Fever.
It's crazy to me that, I do think she'll coach through the end of the year, but unless they have a massive turnaround in the second half of the year, which it would not surprise me if they do, because keep in mind, these girls have been together, a month?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a little bit more than a month. There's a lot of young talent. They need help in the backcourt. But there's so many things I just scratch my head with what Christy Sides is doing. The rotation pattern makes no sense at all. I mean, you have Caitlin Clark finally getting her momentum in a game. Your team's doing well. You bench her. You bench Aaliyah Boston. The Sparks go on 11-0 run over the course of 3.5 minutes. You don't take a timeout. And you don't put them back in. It's frankly inexcusable to me. And the other thing is, I do think the players need to help support Christy Sides. I don't think it's all Christy Sides. When you're emphasizing long twos, you kind of already lost me at that point. The worst shot in basketball. Absolutely ridiculous. And the other thing is, why are they not playing through Caitlin Clark all the time? I like Kelsey Mitchell. I think Kelsey Mitchell's a nice player. I think she'd be a really good fit. But Kelsey Mitchell seems to really not want to play through Caitlin Clark. I don't know if it's an intimidation factor, if it's not her team anymore or whatever. but the team's going to do best when Caitlin is Caitlin and she's not taking 8 shots a game. Caitlin should be taking no less than 15 to 16 shots a game. They've been close. I think with better head coaching, they're potentially 3-5 right now instead of 1-7. So the other thing that's kind of puzzling to me, guys, and I just found this out maybe a week and a half ago, Christy Sides has never been a head coach before. No, I'm not talking the WNBA. I'm not talking about college. She was an assistant high school coach, an assistant college coach, and an assistant WNBA coach before getting this job last year as the head coach of the Indiana Fever. Just shocking to me is probably an understatement, but they do need help with the head coaching position. In my opinion, I doubt this would happen, but at the end of the year, if they decide to part ways with Christy Sides, I think they throw a blank check at Terry Morin, the Indiana Hoosiers head coach.
That wouldn't have to move far.
No,
there's something to be said for. And now they're out Indiana's without one of their better players, right? Didn't I see that for 2 or 3 weeks?
Temmy's going to be out. Yeah. So she's kind of been inconsistent, but she's also been one of the better players, and I think she fits alongside more Caitlin Clark's playing style. But the other thing is this gives Grace Berger a chance, because I don't know why Grace Berger has not been playing. I'm not saying she's the difference maker between these wins, but she's a better perimeter defender than they've had. She can hit the mid-range shot, which apparently Christy Sides loves. She's been very forthright about that. But there are certain things I think they need to try. And again, I think it's fairly clear, guys, based on body language. Caitlin's done losing. I mean, you can tell there's some frustration with her on the bench.
What did she do to get teed up, David? Do you know?
Probably told the refs the truth.
Yeah. I mean, we never did see, at least I haven't seen a head-on shot. Trent mentioned yesterday, and he's right. Keep waiting for somebody from the stands to actually have that video and put it up on X, but I never saw it. And you couldn't tell.
It's crazy to me, though, too, when you bring up that, because, look, again, Caitlin's not innocent this entire thing.
No.
She has to cut down the turnover. She has to do some other things well. But when she drops 30 points, 6 assists, 5 rebounds, 3 steals, 3 blocks, the first rookie to ever put up that line, the 4th WNBA player ever to put up that line, and then your head coach says, yeah, you know what, we need to stop talking to the officials. Let me talk to the officials. Say, Christy, talk to the officials. Go ahead. Do it. Get the technical. It's just, there's just no accountability from her, and I think that's also the most mind-boggling part. You have a very talented but a very, very young team. Why you keep throwing them under the bus? And I don't know if you guys saw this, but Nalissa Smith liked a tweet yesterday from somebody. Somebody was basically saying, why are you taking Nalissa Smith out because of one defensive mistake? That's a good way to ice out and lose your talented young players.
Ooh, yeah. Ooh.
Trouble in paradise.
It definitely feels that way. Well, speaking of basketball, the big news from last night, taking it up almost to the 12 o'clock hour, it was Payton Sandfort making his decision without having an opportunity. I believe there's going to be some media availability with Payton later today. How difficult of a decision was this for him? The will he, won't he, and knowing that this is a weak NBA draft, the potential of hearing his name called probably maybe better this year than it would be next season. How difficult was this choice for Sandfort?
Yeah, I think it was a really tough choice because, as you mentioned, I think this is the weakest draft class, at least in the past decade, if not more. I don't think next year's is necessarily better, but I also think it's more top-heavy next year. But you also have to keep in mind, I think this is the last year for the COVID guys. So a lot of those 5th or 6th year players are going to be eligible for the draft and have no choice but to be eligible for the draft next season. But, talking to scouts, I think if Payton Sandfort had performed better in the 5-on-5 portion of the NBA Combine, I think that would have maybe secured him a spot. He had a couple really good workouts with some teams. I do think that Payton probably made up his mind in the middle of yesterday. I know he and Coleman Hawkins were not thrilled with the deadline, but I also think that the deadline's there for a reason at this point. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. But at the end of the day, I do think that, Payton Sandfort sees himself coming back. If he has a big year shooting from 3, if he can improve at least as an off-ball defender, on-ball defender, I think we know what he's going to be, right?
Yep.
There's only a certain ceiling that he has there. But if he goes back, hits 40% from 3, grabs 7 boards, drops 18 points, does what he does, improves off the ball, I think he can at least play himself into an early second round, maybe even a late first round pick. I think he's got that sort of ceiling. That's at least what I've been told from scouts. I think if he goes back to the combine, shoots better, tests a little bit better athletically, I think he solidifies himself. So it did come up till like the 11th hour, but I ultimately think that this was the best decision for Payton, at least to give himself the best chance being a sticking piece in the NBA for his future.
Yeah, I agree with you on both points. I mean, obviously that last one and the fact that had he performed better in the 5-on-5, I think it would have been gone. So I'm sitting trying to figure out, what's keeping him. I mean, is he still unsure what's, and then I got to thinking that all the boxes you have to check. And one of them, I wonder, David, if was there NIL negotiations going on up until the end? Because that's part of the college sports landscape now. Do you know if that was part of the reason for the delay? I'm just trying to figure out what kept it embargoed until 10 o'clock or whenever it was.
Yeah, here's what I'll say is I don't know if there was any specific negotiations with Iowa or other schools. I mean, Payton basically said last week that if he was coming back to school, he was going back to Iowa. But let's not get this twisted. If Payton Sandfort had been chasing the NIL money or chasing all of that, he would have transferred and he would have gotten more money than what Iowa could offer him. I know it's kind of the harsh reality of the situation, but when you're Payton Sandfort, you can shoot the ball like that. I mean, it would have not surprised me seriously if he transferred. Blue Bloods would have been after him. He probably could have gotten paid $750,000. And I just don't think that kind of money is going to be thrown around if you're playing for Iowa basketball, just kind of with the knowledge I have of where they're at with the basketball funding. So I don't think it was a negotiation there. I do think that, Iowa probably did everything they could to make it worthwhile for him. But Payton's also a loyal kid. I mean, you think about his offers that he had. Iowa was the first one to get on him early. They were recruiting him hard. He's kind of had the green light since day one. I think there are a lot of factors, and Payton Sandfort's kind of loyal to the soil, so to speak. But yeah, I mean, if he was chasing the money, chasing the bread, I mean, he probably would have said, you know what? I appreciate Iowa, Fran. I appreciate you, but given where everything's at right now, I need to go make the money while I can. But I also think Payton's confident enough in his future where he knows that Fran's going to make him the focal point, put him in the best position to make a lot more future earnings rather than just the immediate gratification earnings.
And if the basketball doesn't work out, you can always do voiceovers because Boy's got some pipes on him. He really does.
Might be coming for our job here pretty soon after the playing career finishes up. Football, the big news of today, and we'll get more this afternoon. 1:30 announcement, it looks like, for the first 3 games of the Iowa schedule. Black Friday, we knew it was going to be Nebraska again, but under the lights, going to be a chilly one at Kinnick Stadium coming up on Black Friday.
Not in the press box.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll be hanging out. I'll be on my about 11th cup of coffee with my espresso. I'll be golden. But, man, I'll tell you, if you thought the Iowa-Nebraska game was rowdy before,
ooh,
gentlemen, you're thinking about this. These people will be tailgating for 8-9 hours. And imagine if there's something on the line. What if Nebraska's playing for bowl eligibility? What if Iowa's playing to go 10-2? What if Iowa's playing to go 11-1? I mean, there's a lot that could potentially be on the line. Because, again, the more I look at Iowa's schedule, guys, the more I'm kind of talking myself in. They're winning 10 games next year.
Yeah.
It's been difficult for me to kind of look at, a lot of 50-50 games, so to speak. But, if Iowa's defense has me feeling pretty confident, losing Tory Taylor's going to be big. But, man, I'm telling you, this could be a very, very hostile environment inside Kinnick Stadium, especially with prime time. If it's, 11 degrees, people are doing pregame fires or whatever they want, whatever they're doing. I'm ecstatic about this. I'm looking for another snow. Again, I'm excited because I'm in the press box. I would not mind seeing, a foot of snow and them flying around in like an ice bowl or something. But it will be a lot of fun, I think.
I'm with you. I can find a path to that many wins as well, double digits. And I thought there's no way, but here we are. Can we go back to basketball, David? Give me your starting 5 now that we know Sandfort is back. Who's your starting 5?
Yeah, I think right off the top of my head, I think Drew Thelwell is going to be the starting point guard. I think Brock's going to be the 6th man.
Okay.
I think he's got one more year underneath. Obviously, Josh Dix at the 2.
Yep.
I have Payton Sandfort at the 3. I got Sadhu Traore at the 4. I think he starts, and I have Owen Freeman at the 5. I think Chris Taggio could potentially play a role. I think Cooper Koch could be another guy off the bench as well. I mean, Iowa's got some pieces, but I think you bring in those 2 transfers. Iowa needs defensive and rebounding help. Traore is going to be a really, really good mix at that 4 spot. Josh Dix, Payton Sandfort can hit the 3. Drew Thelwell, 35% from 3, but also, winningest player in Morehead State history, 6.5 assists a game. It's going to be a very different Iowa offense, but I think they are a lot more versatile pieces, and I think they'll be able to shoot the ball at a more effective clip next year as well.
I know you guys had a lot on recruiting as Iowa offered a bunch of 2025 and 26 prospects. We see a guy like Traore coming in. You mentioned Chris Taggio, both those guys, athletic specimens, something breaking the prototype, I guess, of Ray McCaffrey type of players. when you looked at some of the guys that they offered, and I thought it was especially apparent in the 2026 class, are we seeing maybe a shift in some of the philosophy of some of the players that they're going after?
Yeah, and I think that's the reality of when you add in Oregon, Washington, USC, and UCLA to the conference as well. I just think we're at a critical point in college basketball where fundamentals are not out the window by any means. I think you look at UConn, what they're able to do with just the variety of styles that they play. I think we're looking at more of an emphasis on defense. I think we're looking at more of an emphasis on athleticism. Yes, shooting's important. Yes, outscoring the opponent is obviously what matters at the end of the day. But I do think you're looking at Fran and company trying to be a little bit more aggressive just from an athletic standpoint, because I think they've kind of gotten to the point saying, hey, you know what? We can get great shooters and make them phenomenal shooters, but they're limited athletically. Can you have an okay or average shooter and a freak athlete and trust your development to turn them into a great shooter? Because if you have that combination rather than the former, I think you're setting yourself up for more of a chance in the postseason.
David Eickholt, HawkeyeInsider.com, part of 24/7 Sports. David, a lot of ground to cover with you here today. Thanks for doing this for us. We appreciate it as always. Have a wonderful week. What can we look forward to at Hawkeye Insider once we do get it? What the schedule later on today? Will that cause you to head to the keyboard, or what are you doing this afternoon?
That's exactly what I'll be doing. I'll be trying to get all this out. I'm actually going to be in Des Moines this weekend for the Craft Beer Fest. I have not been there before, so I'm very excited about that. But it's also worth noting, too, as of 30 minutes ago, our own Sean Bach signed a multi-year extension to stay with 24/7 Sports covering Iowa. So we'll have a bunch of recruiting stuff. We're going to have a bunch of stuff in the schedule, a lot of basketball stuff, women's basketball recruiting. No off season, and I know it's good for you guys in sports radio in the summer in Iowa.
Indeed it is. Enjoy the capital city this weekend, David. Thanks for what you do for us. We appreciate it. We'll talk to you down the road.
Hey, appreciate it, guys. Take care.
Yeah, good to talk to you. David Eickholt, HawkeyeInsider.com.
Back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. And big thank you to David Eickholt for joining us today. All right, as we wrap things up, there is some speculation out there about who the next radio voice is going to be for the Iowa Hawkeyes, taking over for Ed Podolak in the color commentary role. Of course, Podolak there for a very long time, dating back to even before Adolph was there and up in the booth with Jim Zabel for a number of years with 1040 WHO and then the Hawkeye Radio Network that was created. And him and Dolph now for the last couple of decades. Former players are amongst them. We threw out some speculation about some different people that would make a whole lot of sense. Now, this is just online chatter. This is nothing definitive. This is not breaking news by any means. But amongst some of the finalists that are out there, I know that Mitch King, I heard he was on a podcast and mentioned that he was amongst the finalists for the job. I haven't heard Mitch King before. Just know him as a player, and boy, what a player he was. That personality that he had on the field, if that can translate to the radio booth, all right, we got something there. Pat Anger, I've heard a ton. The stories are legendary of him. His personality is immense. Will it work in a position working for Learfield? Might have to have a quick trigger figure on that dumb button if that is the case. But Pat Anger, I think, would be a tremendous choice. Matt Vandenberg, Nate Kading, a couple of other names that are out there. Anthony Herron, I know, was at the top of many people's wish list, myself included. Not sure if it made sense for him, though, to take that kind of role as he continues to build his way up. But they'll get somebody good there, and hopefully it'll be a smooth transition because those radio calls, they're still important. And we know still the importance today here, even in the state of Iowa. People around, people working, farming, doing those kind of things. The radio broadcast is certainly a very special product still out there today. And as somebody that works at radio, a little more special, I'm sure, to me as well. Thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. We will talk to you again on Monday. Make it a great weekend, and go Hawks.